This week's episode is sponsored by HelloFresh. If you want to find out how to get 10 free meals delivered right to your door, that's $100 worth of free food on the house. Stick around to the end of the show, and I'll show you how. There are a lot of ways to sack a quarterback. You can win with speed and balance, you can win with length and power, or failing all that, you could just win with pure technique and instinct. There isn't just one method to get the job done, after all, which is why the NFL is littered with so many pass rushers of different shapes and sizes. But every now and then, there comes a prospect that enters the league that defies all conventional labels. These rare, almost generational athletes that can win in not just one or two ways, but in any and every way. The kinds of freaks that don't just have explosiveness or power or length or technique, but rather have the whole package. A few years ago when Myles Garrett was coming out of Texas A&M, I thought he was the apex of pass rushing prospects. I mean, he had it all. Every trait you could think of on the checklist, it was there. And at the time, I thought Garrett was the highest grade I would ever give out for a defensive end. But then, over the past few years since Garrett has entered the league, someone else has emerged in the college ranks. Someone that, in my opinion, is even better. I'm not a believer in perfect prospects per se, but I will say this. If there ever was a perfect defensive end, Ohio State's Chase Young might be it. I tried hard to find a weakness in his game this week, I really did, but truthfully, there just isn't one. His first step is magnificent, his bend around the corner is incredible for his size, his hands and feet are so well trained for his age, and his versatility in alignment out of any stance you want him in makes him virtually scheme-proof. He's almost so gifted it's unfair, but I think what I like the most about Young is how his presence on the field alone can completely eliminate entire sections of an offensive game plan. When we think about how offenses are designed, particularly how pass protection is designed to fit around certain route concepts, every offensive coordinator on earth is operating under one fairly reasonable assumption: that their offensive tackles, no matter how good or bad they are, can just buy the quarterback 2.7 seconds. In most cases, that's all they're going to need, just 2.7 seconds, because that's about the average time from snap to release in the NFL. But when Young is on the field, if he's left one-on-one, that 2.7 second rule no longer applies, and everything on offense has to be changed. Protections are adjusted to slide his way, the plays you call typically develop quicker, like screens or short passes that he can't disrupt as easily, and sometimes you don't even try to block him in the run game either, you just run option or zone read directly at him and hope he takes the wrong guy. Inevitably, your entire offensive philosophy will be different because of Chase Young's presence, unless you commit overwhelming resources to stopping him. And if you don't do either of those things, he has the potential to violate that 2.7 second rule on every single snap. That reshuffling of the board, that forced adjustment to the game plan, that is why he's so valuable, because it allows the defense to dictate to the offense and not the other way around. I'll give you an example just to help you visualize his impact. One of the main ways that offensive tackles try to buy that time in the first place is by pushing edge rushers around the back of the pocket when they try to win on a speed rush, preferably to a depth of about 10 to 11 yards. They don't need to outright shut down that speed all the time, they just need to put up enough resistance so that by the time the pass rusher can turn that corner, they're too deep behind the pocket to hit the quarterback, who's usually stepping up to about an 8-yard depth himself. That's really all they need, just that 2 yards of difference in depth in order to buy that necessary time. But Young is so explosive and so technically developed that tackles can't reliably provide those 2 yards if they're trying to block him one-on-one. They can't even get their hands on him off the snap most of the time because he's so deadly with cross chops and two-handed swipe moves to neutralize their punches, and he's so fast and fluid after that initial move that those tackles have no shot of recovering once he's defeated their hands anyway. So now, because of his explosiveness and technique, that typical 10-yard depth of bending around the corner turns into a 7 or 8-yard depth instead, which puts him squarely in the quarterback's lap with nowhere for him to escape to. Again, in well under 2.7 seconds, he will ruin your passing game if he's left alone. We see him win with speed to the edge, we see him then read tackles oversetting to the edge so he'll counter back inside and win even faster, we see him come free on stunts before centers can even react. I mean, the speed at which he moves for a 265-pounder is just remarkable, and for all but the most athletic offensive lineman, he is just too much to handle. Physically, he's a mismatch for everyone, and both the opposing offense and his own teammates know that. I can't even count the number of times I saw protection slide his way, only for the rest of the defensive line to capitalize on their one-on-ones and get pressure anyway, or the number of times when his pure speed off the edge caused quarterbacks to step up straight into an interior lineman to finish the job, or when protections were again so focused on him that even the most basic of creeper pressures that anyone and everyone should have seen coming a mile away were still able to come free totally unblocked for a huge sack. Flat out, offenses were scared to death of Chase Young because of his ability to beat any tackle in front of him in 2.5 seconds or less, and that fear fundamentally changed the game plans for both teams every week. On offense specifically, 5 and 7-step drop passing concepts were no longer an option against him. That means Dagger, gone. Mills, gone. Yankee, unless you heard Max Protect off play action, also gone. They just weren't worth the risk anymore because those offensive coordinators couldn't trust their own protection, which meant the Ohio State secondary didn't really have to worry that much about any of them. I mean, shit, even Clemson of all teams was basically just relegated to screens, quarterback runs, and the occasional fade here and there when they wanted to take a deep shot while still getting the ball out quickly, and that game plan worked-ish, but it's not like it was a normal Clemson offense out there. They had to stick within a rather narrow scope of play calls by their standards, and that was all because of Chase Young. He just really is that dominant and that influential. If I was going to try to nitpick anything from him, and I mean the smallest of details, it's just that his swipe move was so good that sometimes he would tunnel vision on that one combo and try it over and over again, even when tackles were playing specific techniques to stop it, and he would sometimes take way too long to try something else, even when those same tackles were basically offering themselves up to counter moves on a silver platter. I think back to that Penn State game, for instance, where he still got 3 sacks, mind you, but he very easily could have had double that number if he just recognized that freshman left tackle Rasheed Walker was consistently using a hug technique with really wide hands late in the rush to protect himself from that swipe, which is a good technique to contain a speed rush, by the way, because you're basically just catching the rush and redirecting it harmlessly behind the pocket, like I said earlier. But as a consequence of using that technique, tackles will literally just leave their chest wide open and beg pass rushers not to just run right through them with power, and for some reason Young never recognized what Walker was doing to him so that he could counter it. I mean, it took all the way until the 4th quarter for him to finally punish that technique with a bull rush, and it immediately worked on the first try to disrupt and ruin a play, but then he never used it again, so I'm not really sure if that was more on him or more on his coaches. And while I guess I could consider him not punishing Walker as a negative when I give him a final grade, I mean shit, he still had 3 sacks that day while literally only using one move on 95% of his snaps, so that's still pretty ridiculously impressive. Truth be told, when I watched Young this week, one of the things that stuck out the most to me wasn't just the 16.5 sacks that he got in only 11 games, it was the additional 16 sacks that he could have gotten if he just sprinkled in a few more power moves to take advantage of tackles that were scared shitless of his speed. He showed multiple times that he has the kind of length and strength necessary to have a good bull rush. I'm not really worried about that at all. I just want him to actually do it more often. And honestly, if that is my biggest criticism, that one of the most dominant football players I've ever seen could have been more dominant if he just added some jelly to his peanut butter sandwiches every once in a while, that's kind of amazing. He is so far in a league of his own that averaging a sack and a half per game could still legitimately be seen as underachieving, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever graded an edge rusher like that before. If you want to measure him against Garrett, that's fair, or Clowney or Mack or either of the Bosas. All of those comparisons are warranted, but to me, when looking at the whole package, I think he's better than all of them. I didn't even think it was possible to see a college defensive end have the technical development of the Bosa brothers in the body of Myles Garrett with the versatility of Khalil Mack, but here we are. The bar has officially been raised. The standard that we compare all future prospects to has been reset. If last year was the kind of production that we can expect from Young when he still didn't entirely know what he was doing, I mean, damn, just imagine what he's going to do when he really figures it out. I'd like to give a preemptive congratulations to you, Washington, and I sincerely mean that, because if I'm right about the player that you're likely about to draft, your terrible, no good, miserable 2019 season may have just been the best luck you've ever had. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode, and again, thank you to our sponsor this week, HelloFresh. If you watch this channel for a while, you know how long these episodes take to make. I'm pretty sure by the time I'm done editing this Chase Young episode in particular, it'll probably be pushing about 60 hours. And when you work that much, it's very hard to consistently grocery shop and cook dinners at home for me and my wife. But with HelloFresh, having those nice home-cooked meals with Nicole is way easier to pull off. They send me 3 days worth of dinners delivered right to my doorstep. All of them were already portioned out, the instructions were easy to follow, the ingredients were fresh, everything tasted amazing, and every single meal was different, so we never got bored eating the same kind of food over and over. In fact, there's 22 seasonal chef-curated recipes for you to choose from every single week just for that reason, and the actual cost of each meal is now at about $5.66 per serving, which is on par with my local grocery store if I was going to go buy the same ingredients and make the same thing. And it's also way cheaper than if we went to a restaurant to grab takeout, so overall, not only was it convenient, but it also helped to save us money because in the weeks that we have HelloFresh, we never need takeout. For someone like me that works constantly and doesn't have the time or energy to shop or cook on some nights, HelloFresh has been a lifesaver and I cannot recommend it enough. There's a reason why they're the #1 meal kit in America, so if you want to try it out for yourself and just get a taste of how convenient and easy it will make your life, please check them out at HelloFresh.com at the link in the description below and use promo code FILMROOM10 to get 10 free meals in your first month with free shipping, a $100 value just for trying them out. Again, thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring us, and as for me in the channel news before I wrap this whole thing up, I just want to let you know that I'm really happy that you guys like that Scotch for Breakfast format I posted last week, and there will be many more of those coming throughout this offseason, I can promise you that, in addition to our normal Film Room episodes, of course. And as of now, we're smack dab in the middle of draft season, so I've got several more draft prospect film rooms scheduled too. I think the next one is going to be on Joe Burrow, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'll figure it out sometime this week, I guess. But yeah, I'll have something releasing next week. Whatever it is, I'm sure you'll like it. And until then, later.